I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Project 2025. I reviewed a lot of it. There's some good ideas in there. We need to help Donald Trump get across the finish line. It's all about getting him elected president. And I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for Trump.
I've criticized a lot of Trump's rhetoric, and I'm not a big fan of some of the things that he says.
The biggest problem Trump had during his first term, guys, is you had a lot, and I hate to say it, of congressional Republicans who actually refused to support the agenda. They were stabbing him in the back in private. I know Donald Trump. He cares about this country. He wants to run for president to make it better, not to install himself as some sort of dictator. It's just ridiculous, Brendan.
My name is Dave Thiel. This is Travis Quinlan. We're both constituents and Iraq war vets. We're hoping to talk to someone about a photograph I have of Congressman Walz.
Okay.
Not sure if you have ever seen this picture before?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, in it depicts 2004 Afghanistan veteran.
Right.
Congressman Walz is not an Afghanistan war veteran, is he?
He served in Italy as part of Operation Enduring Freedom.
Okay, but he didn't serve in Afghanistan, did he?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Hi, Rick. I'm Dave Thiel. How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
There's a young lady in the other office that was helping us, but if you can, we're.
You guys want to come in and have a seat?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, have a seat.
I am Dave Thiel. This is Travis Quinlan. We're both constituents, and we're both Iraq war vets. We served together with the Minnesota National Guard. So we're here on a veteran-related issue. I don't know if you are familiar with this picture at all. This was taken in 2004 here in Mankato, and it's actually been posted on the internet for quite some time, and nobody quite realized what it is. But
oh, there we go. How are you guys doing tonight? Today is August the 8th. Tonight we're diving into a couple of things. Sorry about that delay there. You know, I'm still learning this technology stuff for these podcasts, and it is it's a lot to learn, I'll tell you that, especially for somebody that's not very techy. So what we're going to dive into tonight is who is J.D. Vance and who is Tim Walz. I want to say this in the beginning. I think it's crazy how I was just thinking about the entire ordeal about us voting for a president and a vice president. And, you know, it's crazy that I'm covering what I am now and having to talk about the things that I am now. Instead of, you know, I'm looking at this and thinking, we have some very, very intelligent, bright individuals in this country that are just off the chart, super smart, can figure out things, they can dissect things, they can figure out how things work and don't work and why they don't work. I mean, just really, really, really brilliant people. And I think it's really thinking back to all the presidents and the vice presidents and everything since I can remember, at least when I was paying attention. I think it's crazy we're at the point to where an election isn't about finding the absolute best person in this country to help us solve the, you know, our issues and then global issues, right? Instead, if you look at politics here and all around the world, it's either done by lying, cheating, stealing, and it's always about who can trash the other person the hardest. It's always about who can make the other person look worse than they do. And, you know, I caught a bit of Kamala's speech today. I don't remember where it popped up or how, but, you know, she was saying, or maybe not today, but recent. And she was saying, go look up Project 2025. That is Trump's plan. That is what he's going to do. That's going to take away, it's going to, you know, hurt middle class America, yada, yada, yada. And the thing is, like, whether he's telling the truth or not, Trump has come out publicly and denounced that. So what that proves is that Kamala's only saying it for one reason, is to try and make it seem like his plan so that when people go read it, They say, "Oh, I don't agree with this. I would never vote." You know what I mean? So it's ridiculous that it comes down to who can lie the best convincingly to their crowd, to their party enough, and then try to lie enough to get them to come from the other party over to their party. And I think it's just really sad that we've been around for as long as humans have been around for as long as we have. And the best that we can evolve to is to become liars and cheaters and stealers and trash other people and spread hatred. I think that's just sad that as a humanity, that is where we are, right? Um, I was thinking about that today, and it just kind of sank in, I mean, it just really did. It really kind of sank in, and it made me really think. And I was just like, man, that's a really bad deal. So I'm going to show you some stuff tonight. I'm going to read some stuff. I'm going to show you some clips. I'm going to show you some articles and things like that, because I do believe that when I talk to you, that receipts are very important, right? And then also anything that I say should never be taken as end all be all. It's just I try to do my homework very well. But remember, we're only able to decipher through the information we can dig through and find. So sometimes what we say is not correct. So, but again, if you've ever, a lot of you have followed me. I've had 70 plus accounts. So a lot of y'all have followed me through those. And sometimes you'll see a post and, one that's got a lot of views and it's moving real fast. And then all of a sudden it disappears. Every once in a while it's TikTok, but then on the other hand, if I notice that I said something incorrect, I will pull that down, because keeping it up for the views is not the right thing to do, right? And censorship should be left to ourselves, and we should censor ourselves when we say something incorrect, and we shouldn't spread things that are incorrect. And it's just, why do people do it? Well, because we see the people that are running for the top position in this country are willing to lie. They're willing to, completely falsify things in order to win. That's what they're doing. They're willing to do that. So it just kind of hit me like that today. And the other thing is, when people are not denouncing, right, what somebody else says, it makes you wonder, is it true, right? So that's another thing that we have to be careful for, right? And the other thing is that is very concerning to me, is we've made it this far in humanity. We've made it, we've seen a lot of destruction in this country over the last couple of decades. If you're over 30 or 40, then you've seen a lot of decline over the last 20 years, right? And what's really sad is that when somebody like me or another creator or another podcaster or whatever, they go through and they dig and they find this information. When we put it out there, I put it out there no matter who it is. I put it out there whether if it's Trump, I put it out there whether if it's Kamala, whether it's going to be Walz, Vance, it doesn't matter. What's amazing to me is when I put up something about Vance or I put up something about Trump, I get attacked by the very people that follow me. And I think that's really interesting, because I would think we are at a point in society where what we want is the truth, period. It doesn't matter how much we don't want to hear it, how much it hurts our little feelings that it's about somebody that we like. We should always be wanting the truth, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's going to carry us through to the other side. And I'm telling you, we're buying into so much BS all the time that we don't know which way is right or wrong. So anyway, I'm going to jump into this real quick. We're going to talk about Walz first. This guy right now, what I think is very interesting is they are attacking the stolen valor. And I'm going to go ahead and share that screen with you real quick. So give me just a second to pull that screen up. And there we go. Let me pop this button so you can see it. Perfect. All right. So basically, what this guy's saying is he was a high ranking, right, in this the National Guard, right? So, and then of course the left is pushing. He's got the longest serving record in the Senate, and he's just this great, wonderful guy. He was a command sergeant major, is what he's told everybody, right? But actually, if you go to Minnesota's official website, he's a master sergeant. And the reason is because he didn't complete all the stuff he needed to do to get his sergeant major title, right? So if you don't finish the coursework, you don't get the rank, right? So it's kind of like they go hand in hand. Now they'll give you that rank while you're working on all the coursework to get it done, but you won't get to retain that title, and you won't get to, retire with it if you don't finish it, right? And you also, an interesting fact about that is you have to do an extra 2 years after you finish this coursework, right? So what he is doing is he is lying about his military career. He claimed that he signed up for 4 more years after 9/11, and then he just naturally retired in 2005, which was 1 year before his unit deployed to Iraq. But what really happened was he signed up for 6 more years, right? Because he had to do 2 more years after he finished this course. He had to stay in for 2 more years to continue to keep that rank, right? And then he learned that his unit was going to get deployed to Iraq. And then what happened is he said he was always planning to retire, but how could you plan to retire if you accepted this command sergeant major and you had to do two years of the coursework, and then you had to, or not 2 years of coursework, but you had to do the coursework, and then you had to stay in for 2 more years. Additionally, how would you say that you were always planning on retiring then, and then you tell people today that you were command sergeant major, right? So you're lying today because you're not, and you didn't finish the military with that rank, and you know that because I'm sure he still probably draws a retirement check. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know much about the National Guard. It's very different than the rest. So the bottom line is he didn't finish that extra 2 years. So when he got out, he was a staff sergeant, right? So the reason that they're saying he left was because he did not want to deploy to Iraq. And there was a deal going around. I don't know if it's true, so I'm just going to say this and say that you need to not spread it. I'm just telling you, those of you that are watching this, is he had said that he didn't sign up to go to war in other places in the National Guard, right? He felt like that was more a stateside, always going to be stateside, used for, weather catastrophes and maybe crowd control at things. And, that's the kind of thing that National Guard is. So he wasn't really wanting to go to war. Now, again, I don't know if that's 100%. So let's talk about his record, right? Because now this is something, what I find interesting is this is what everybody is talking about right now, right? So I think what's interesting about everybody talking about this right now, and this includes Trump, this includes Vance, this includes, well, I guess those two, and I mean news outlets and all that stuff, and even the Charlie Kirks and all the all the podcasters and all that stuff, right? And political, I call them political influencers because that's what they are, right? So they're all talking about the stolen valor, which, don't mistake what I'm saying, that has very big ramifications and is not a good thing, right? But what's interesting is people are not talking about this guy's record, right? So let's talk about illegal immigration. So he signed HF4, giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants in Minnesota, right? And in his budget, he signed an agreement to make 40,000 illegal immigrants in the state eligible for taxpayer health insurance, right? Subsidized health insurance. That cost the taxpayers $100 million. Now, how many people in Minnesota don't have health insurance? right? So he gave it to 40,000 illegal immigrants, costing taxpayers $100 billion, right? And he also established an office called the Office of New Americans to attract more illegal immigrants to the state and then streamline their access to government services, to welfare. And Walz said in an interview, he would invest in a ladder company that would build a ladder tall enough to go over Trump's wall and let as many people in from the southern border as possible, right? I think that's a big hot button right now because people are broken. They they need they need money and they need healthcare, and they can't get it, but yet people that aren't supposed to be here are getting it. So then you have lawlessness in 2020, obviously with the George Floyd, the rioters just ravaged Minneapolis. They burned tons of buildings to the ground, including the police station, right? And Walz actually expressed sympathy for the rioters and waited about 18 hours after the Minneapolis mayor calls and says, "Hey, man, we got to get the National Guard in here. Things are going haywire. Buildings are burning." They burned the police in 18 hours. And the reason that he didn't do it faster was because the paperwork was not done properly. That was what he said was why the delay took, because the paperwork during the city getting burned and looted and rioted didn't have the right paperwork, right? That doesn't jive, right? And then his running mate, of course, now is Kamala Harris, and she was getting people to donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And this would actually turn around after the police put these rioters in jail, and then they would turn around and they would just bail them out. And then his wife, Gwen Walz, she said some crazy stuff, right? So one of her things is she said she had the windows open for as long as she could to smell the burning tires and all that stuff. And she held it open as long as she could withstand it because it was such a significant moment in history. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just leave that there for that. Another thing that she says her position on criminals is give them as many chances as they need, right? Which doesn't really please those law and order people. Isn't that just a very odd statement to make? Like I know people that follow the law, that doesn't really sit well with them, but we should still give them as many chances as they need. What does that mean? I mean, I know people that have been in and out of prison 25 times, 15 times, 10 times, and they keep going back. It's because they don't know anything different, right? So last year, Walz signed HF 28, allowing 55,000 felons to vote before they completed their probation and before they paid restitution to their victims. Now, in most states, if you are a felon and you've done your time, you got off your probation, you paid your stuff, and you're clean, you've completed everything, they'll let you start voting again. But 55,000 of them got to vote. Why? You just ask yourself, why would he do that, right? Because if he's the one that did it and got 55,000, then wouldn't he get a majority of them to vote for him, right? I mean, it sounds like logical, right? Socialist economy. So Tim Walz took office. He grew the state budget at twice the rate of the inflation for a total of 42%. And at the same time, he imposed $10 billion in new taxes. So as a result of that, now Minnesota has the 8th highest amount of net migration of income out of the state, leaving, right? And I believe California and New York are definitely in there. And it's ranked 42nd in the nation as far as the employment goes, right? So 42nd out of 52 states, so it's not doing good on employing people, right? And that's based on Tax Foundation. Walz has also signed into law the California-inspired bills, which will radically increase the price of electricity, something that everybody has to have, that already kicks everybody's butt. The electricity bills come in every month, and it's just like, oh, right? HF7, for example, requires the state's energy supply to be completely carbon-free by 2040, right? So that would be no natural gas, no oil by 2040. So everything would be running off of wind, which doesn't work every day, and solar power when the sun doesn't shine every day. Yeah. Okay. So makes sense? Yeah. In Minnesota, I'm pretty sure it gets pretty damn cold there, right? I don't know a ton about it. But radical gender ideology. So he signed in HF 146, making Minnesota a sanctuary state, right, for child transgender surgeries, right? So the bill allows the state to take away the child to let them proceed with the irreversible surgeries, of course, in the name of gender affirming care, right? And Walz signed HF 2497, which ended up putting tampons in boys' bathrooms as young as 4th grade. Now, the argument from the other side is he did it for tampons in every bathroom. What are you hating? You don't think girls need them? And then the question would be, what did that cost the state? Right. So in every state and government facility, in the schools, in every public restroom operated by the city, at the parks, blah, blah, blah. How much does that cost taxpayers? So if you have, I'm just going to be hypothetical here. So if you have, 400 people that identify that are boys, identify as girls, and need to stick a tampon somewhere, then why wouldn't you just make it where they could, come to their local government office and get free tampons? Like, why would you impose this gigantic cost onto the taxpayers, right? And he's always been in the forefront of the attack on traditional families, which is really strange because he's married for like dozens of years and has a daughter. But remember, it's rules for thee, or rules for they, not for thee, right? And as a teacher in 1999, he helped establish his school's Gay and Straight Alliance, GSA Club. Yeah, in 99. So, because it seems like he knows so much about it, right? Married and with a daughter. And so, I don't know, maybe he's got some extracurricular activities. I don't know. Okay. So let's jump into this. Anti-life. Walz signed into law HF1, which is the most extreme. I can't say because I got my live going on on TikTok here, but unaliving of unborn, right? And he declared it a right to do it with no limitations. Let me be clear about that. 0 limitations. He also signed a bill that was repealing informed consent laws and a 24-hour waiting period for women, right? Seeking. Now, Walz also replaced the state laws requiring unborns during a botched unaliving deal to receive medical care, meaning if it's botched and it's born, then they can just walk away and leave it there, obviously for one purpose only. And that happens about 5 to 6 times per year. That is just really, that's a very tough pill to swallow, because that, in my eyes, right, is what you would be brought up on charges for and taken to jail and sent to prison for. And that's how I would see that, right? So attack on religion. Walz obviously during the pandemic kept the churches shut down while businesses and restaurants were allowed to operate with limited restrictions. Walz also lost in court after signing a bill which unlawfully prohibited religious colleges and universities from requiring a faith statement. So he wanted to make it where they didn't have to. I wonder why, what his goal was for that. That law was struck down, though, in the courts after a Christian family sued Walz in the case of LOE versus Walz, right? Undermining elections. As soon as the Democrats took control of the Minnesota legislature, they worked with Walz to dramatically change the election procedures in a way that will invite fraud, right? Walz signed in HF3, which loosened requirements to get on Minnesota's permanent absentee ballot list, and voters in Minnesota can now receive absentee ballots forever. And common sense would say that if you're going to have voting, number one, it should be required by every single citizen of the country. That way, whenever whatever happens, you know, everybody's got to do it, right? So if everybody has to vote and you get to take off work, you probably have to do it over a 3 or 4 day period so the whole country didn't shut down, or just say one day, hey, on November 5th every year, don't expect a gas station to be open, don't expect a store to be open, don't expect every year. Then everybody could prepare for that, right? Then you have to figure out something for doctors and police officers and stuff like that. But you understand what my point is, right? They'd have to vote early, right? But you only want absentee ballots for a reason, right? Voters in Minnesota, so eventually they did not request one that year, or if they move and do not actively deregister to vote. So HF3 also allows 16-year-olds to pre-register to vote, right? Okay. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad idea, to be honest with you. I mean, get them, getting ready for their duties and all that stuff, right? Walz signed on HF 28, allowing the 55,000 felons to vote before they took care of their business. And he signed in HF 1830, which turns election day into election season, lasting 46 days, right? So the reason I said that it should just be in one day, all done, you can maybe a week, you can register, you can go do it early, but then the final day, right? Is because when you have that long drawn out period, there's lots of things that can be happening. And to my understanding, don't hold me to this, but I believe that everything is Democratic now in that state, right? How all of it's controlled, Democrat controlled. And that's obviously, we know that's Ilhan Omar's state. And here's something that's extremely interesting that I found out is that they changed the Minnesota flag to resemble the Somalian flag, right? And what I find really interesting, and I mean, when I say resemble, it's the same colors with it, they did it on purpose, right? So they have the largest, I think there's it's the largest concentration of Somalis there. And I can't remember that. I think I want to say 60,000 or 80,000, something like that. And what's really interesting about this is there is a mosque there. And I'm not going to say the name because I don't want anybody to do anything crazy, but there's a mosque there that Walz likes to visit. And Walz likes to visit it because he feels like he's being neighborly. And that's what he says. And this particular mosque has had 45 people go to, I think it's the radical group is called Al-Badad or something like that. And then the other one is ISIS, right? So the FBI has them on a watch list. They know that these 45 people have come out. Almost all of them came out of that mosque, but 45 of them came from Minneapolis. they do. He also made it into law where they do the Islam prayer 5 times a day called Islam to the public, right? So they air the stuff out on air horns or gigantic speakers, whatever you want to call them. But he says that the Ten Commandments have no business in the schools, right? So you have to wonder who's running him, right? And then all the fraud that he's had during the COVID deal, they had $500 million that was going to go for hero pay, right? So this was the first responders, the paramedics, the doctors, all this stuff. And only about 40%, so not even half, 40% went to the workers. And then the other 60%, right? So 270 million-ish dollars went to people that were ineligible and in many cases deceased. So where did the money really go? Why was that not investigated by, their attorney general? Why was that not looked into at maybe a federal level, right? Story broke. They got it. They said it was missing. It's all gone. Wrong people, and that's it. It just got swept under the rug, right? And let's see, what was the other thing I was going to tell you? Oh, the day after Trump got almost assassinated, he called his supporters fascists, and then egging on the same exact rhetoric that got us in that position, in the first place. And then what was really interesting is during the George Floyd riots, which, like I told you, he let 18 hours go before he sent in the National Guard, right? It was war zone material in Minneapolis. And again, he stalled that paperwork. He stalled that for 18 hours because of paperwork. Like I don't, I would think that would be the mayor call the governor and be like, yo, things are going really south here. Buildings are burning. The police station's burnt down. Cars are on fire. People are, getting hurt, injured, unalive. We need help. Yeah, I'm going to need you to fill out a form 3661. Make sure that you fill in all spaces. Also, make sure it's in black ink. What are we even talking about, right? That doesn't even make sense. Now, here's something really crazy. So his daughter ends up leaking the guards' deployment plans online so that the rioters would know exactly how long they had to do what they were doing, and they would have to know, and they would know before the National Guard would show up and where, so they could get away with it. Nothing happened to her. And then she didn't leak that on her own, right? What was she doing? Hiding behind daddy's shoulder, and when he was looking at the National Guard's deal, she snapped a picture of it and then went and put it on the line? No. This is just a very, very, very scary ticket. I think that Tim Walz is a white man version of Kamala Harris, but maybe even worse. I don't know, because I think Kamala is I don't know if you've seen the videos where she was getting heckled by some people in the crowd in one of her deals yesterday, or maybe it was today. I don't remember, but she's like, ha ha ha, she's laughing, and then she's like trying to go on, and then finally you just see this look come over her face, and she's like, I believe that everybody has a right to talk, but I'm talking now. And you just see this whole different demeanor, other side of her that's not that goofy, laughy, chuckling person that she always portrays to be. It was like the authority came out in her. right? And she had this glare on them. When I tell you, she was, I mean, she had the death stare on them. All right, I mean the death stare on them. Like, I'm going to remember who you are, and I'm coming for you kind of look, right? So I think this is that who she really is that we don't get to see on TV, right? Or interviews, because she plays this goofy, um, uh, kind of laughs about everything and makes really bad jokes and has really poor points of view, right? But her staff, she's lost in the 3.5 years, she's lost like 40% of her staff because they say they just can't work for her because she is too evil and too harsh, right? All this stuff. So anyway, I think that, looking at this ticket, I'm not really sure how Tim Walz came into this. I'm really confused how he got into this deal. I didn't even know who he was. I had to go look him up to get all this information that I've been sharing with you because I knew nothing about this guy, right? And the other picks that she had, I could see why they would put them with her, the Jewish guy from Pennsylvania and all this stuff. Those were strategic deals, and he had a lot of skeletons in his closet too, but they were strategic. And so I was kind of able to comprehend the reason they would pick any of those other candidates, because that made sense. And then when they said this guy's name, I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. And so, here's somebody that, this party tends to run on the white guy is the enemy. The white guy is the enemy. The white guy is the enemy. But yet, here we go. We got another crusty old white guy that's in there with her, right? And the interesting thing is, somebody says because they have dirt on him. Yeah, man, listen, everybody's got dirt on everybody if you're in politics, right? Because first of all, those aren't the best people in this country, right? The best people in this country don't want to subject themselves to being lied about and trashed. And see, that's the thing. That's why we don't ever attract anybody that's worth a poo in politics, is because we see what they do to people. We see the lies that they make up. And then we see them, even after the lies are fact checked and proved and whatever, they'll still sit there and they will just continue to perpetuate this lie over and over and over. And a good person with a high IQ that, has an amazing job as an engineer or whatever, who's a brilliant problem solver, who hasn't done anything wrong in their life, has never been subject to that kind of treatment before. They don't want to be subject to that. And again, I think it's insane that in this time and day and age as humanity, what we've done is we've evolved from sleeping in a cave and hunting animals and eating berries and grunting at each other to where we're at today with all the amazing technologies and the really cool things in life and all these great subjects. And we cannot do anything but spew hate, lies, and insult and anger and fight with each other. And I'm seeing it on my live over here that's going. I'm sitting here watching it in the comments because this is how people have to act. And I really don't understand it, because a fact is a fact. He says he was a command sergeant major. He is not. He did not finish it. He did not go to Iraq. He was going to be in command of 500 servicemen, and he did not go. He bailed and he got out and he retired. And the reason he didn't get his command sergeant major title and pay when he retired was because he didn't complete the coursework and he didn't stay in the additional 2 years. End of sentence. How is that arguable? He's got people from his platoon that are coming out and people that were in with him, and they're validating that, along with going to Minnesota's website and validating that he was a staff sergeant, which you can do. And then his military record proves what they're saying. And then yet I sit here and I watch people argue And it is a stolen valor, Josh, if you claim that you are a rank that you are not. If you claim that you went to war, which he did in a speech, and I could pull the deal up, but I know y'all are seeing it. It's all over TikTok. And he said, he's talking about, he's talking about being a governor. He's talking about doing background checks with talking about guns, doing background checks and deep dives in CDC, which I guess is mental health, and yada yada yada, and regulating weapons of war, which I used when I went to war. He did not go to war. End of sentence. So if you have somebody that's claiming that they're a rank that they never were because they didn't obtain it by finishing, they abruptly retired, and you know that he abruptly retired because he accepted the command sergeant major deal title, which required coursework and for him to serve 2 additional years on top of the 4 years that he signed up for. So that's 6 years. He retired in less than 4, right? So you know that he bailed on that. And then when you go to Minnesota's website and you look him up on there for the National Guard and it says he's a staff sergeant, now you know that he's not telling the truth about that. So why would anybody sit here, there's like is happening on this live, and then people will argue all over social media? How do you argue about factual information? So I understand if you don't know, but if somebody says, hey, you can go look on Minnesota's website and you can see that he's a staff sergeant, he did not reach commands, and then you can hear his people he was in with tell you that he's not. You can go search for that. So don't listen to me. Go check it out for yourself. You can hear him say he went to war when he was talking about when he was governor about weapons of war, and he went to war, and clearly nowhere on his record does it show he went to war. So again, I ask people, how do you sit here and argue that, right? It's all over social media. I mean, you're sitting here watching it, and then I also have to tell you that the crazy thing is everybody seeing it? Because, like the information at the Trump rally, right? That our information gets siloed, right? So conservatives see other conservatives crap, and then the left sees their stuff. And every once in a blue moon, our paths cross. And then instead of us talking to each other, right? He never said he was an officer. He said he was a command sergeant major. Bottom line, there's videos of him saying it, and he wasn't. End of sentence. That's it. So the bottom line is, when we do cross paths, we are so ingrained in believing, because like Kamala was doing her speech at her deal yesterday or today, and she's like, Project 2025 is Trump's plan. When he gets into office, it's going to be Project 2025, and it will ruin middle-class America. And then I don't know, 3 weeks ago or whatever, Trump standing at a rally, and he's like, listen, I don't know what's going on about this 2025. I've heard a few policies out of it. Some I agree with, some I think are really radical. They're far right, and I don't agree with them. But I don't really know the whole thing. I've never sat down and read it, so that's not mine. If you want to know what my plan is, go to whatever his is, Project 2024, where I don't know, whatever his is, right, on his website. So he denounces it, says it's not, and yet the person that's running against him is allowed to continue to spew that is his deal. So what happens is everybody on the left buys into that wholeheartedly because she says it, Pelosi says it, yada, 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 right? They get told over and over and over. So they just believe it. They don't see the video of Trump denouncing it at his rally, right? And again, if you're on here and you're left or right and you don't know me, then I don't pick sides. I bring you the information as it is, right? I just tell you what it is. You decipher it for yourself, and then you figure it out from there, right? Do I understand the ranks? I'm gonna let you slide with that, Josh. You're matter of fact, I'm just gonna get you out of here because you don't even know what you're talking about. So I'm gonna do that. All right, sorry about that. So so again, we have to understand that, because when we try to have conversations together and we try to talk to people from the other side, we got to be a little bit more understanding to if we really want change, if we really want this thing to change, we have got to understand that one side believes everything and the other side believes everything, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. Because I'm going to tell you, there's things I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to JD Vance on this one. I may have to do it. What I may do is just do one tomorrow and upload it, and then that way y'all can come back and see it. I'm going to get into some of this stuff, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get all the way through it because there's quite a bit. Is that we have to understand that we're all buying in to one side or the other. So we're being taught to be divisive from the top, right? They're teaching us or telling us we have to be divisive. You must pick a party. You must align yourself with the party, right? And then you have to agree with everything that party says. And then some people say, well, I don't agree with everything that my party says. Okay. But understand this. The truth lies really in the middle. Because there's a lot of things I can tell you about JD Vance that are very interesting. Now, I put up a video, got, I don't know, 70, 80,000 views about JD Vance. And the comments some were like, whoa, I didn't know that. And then some of them were just scathing towards me, right? We don't need this right now. You need to understand what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the information that I found, and you need to hear it. Because if you're going to support somebody, why would we blindly support somebody in our own party and then tell people on the other side, how can you vote for these people? You don't even know what their policies are or what they stand for. I mean, isn't that hypocritical? It's highly hypocritical. We tell them, you don't know what you're voting for. You don't understand their policies. You don't understand their Agenda 2025 and Agenda 2030 and all this, all the ones that we know about. We tell them that, and then turn around. And how many of you have truly done your research on JD Vance? How many of you know that he went to Yale? What's in Yale? Skull and Bones. Did he go there? Nobody knows. It's a secret society. Do you know that Peter Thiel backed him? Who is Peter Thiel? That's what I'll get into, and it's very interesting who this guy is. He also he was the largest donator for JD Vance's campaign to the tune of $15 million, and then he also gave him the money to capital to start up his capital firm. And I'll get into this some in a minute. But my point is, how many of you know that? How many of you know that he's married to somebody that's labeled as a liberal, maybe modest, right? How many of you know that his grandparents were 100% Democratic and only one time were they not, when they voted for Reagan? So what do you know about him? Did you just watch Hillbilly Elegy and that's it, you're good? And Trump said he's good, so you're good? Trump picked Pence last time. How did that turn out? That wasn't a good call. I know that. That was a really bad call. There's a lot of really bad calls last time. And see, the thing is, when I try to bring that up, people get really defensive. And that is why we are at where we're at. The reason that we're in this true shitstorm that we're in is because people cannot have a conversation for the purpose of gaining knowledge and understanding. They have to smack their hands and stomp their feet and blare their horn and tell you they're right. They know. And if they don't know, I think they get more and more defensive. And then when they can't back up, right, they can't back up what they're saying, then they get really offensive, and then it just turns into a complete shitstorm. So I'm going to jump into some things about JD Vance. And actually what I'll do is I'll probably go through this list. And then when I get into Peter Thiel, I'm going to do a whole little side episode of that. So that'll come after this, and I'll probably do that tomorrow and just post it up if you're interested in watching that. I'm going to tell you, if you understand who Peter Thiel is, you will not be comfortable. That I can assure you. So in 2015, 2 years after he graduated Yale Law School, Vance joined Mithril Capital. It's a venture capital firm that's run in Silicon Valley, right? So he went to Yale and then went to Silicon Valley, and that was with Peter Thiel, right? In 2016, he announced his plans to move back to Ohio from California. Now, again, that was a year, right? So, I mean, he may have got there and been like, "Ooh, this ain't working out." So again, when I tell you these things, I'm trying to spur your thinking and your investigating and you going out and digging and looking. Again, don't take everything I say to be the end all be all, right? So he moved back to Ohio from California, and he started Our Ohio Renewal, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping kids that are disadvantaged children to try to achieve their dreams. Great story, beautiful thing, right? In November of 2022, he was elected to the United States Senate from Ohio with the help of over $15 million from Peter Thiel. That was his first public office, right? So he just got into politics in November 2022, and he's already going to be vice president. I mean, that's kind of fast, wouldn't you say? That seems a little too fast, right? I mean, I get it. He went to Yale, and I get it. I get his training, as I like to say, because that's what Yale does. They train the elites, and that's what Stanford does, and that's what the Ivy League colleges do, is they train people, they train the elites. So this poor hillbilly that left Ohio, graduated Ohio State, and then went to Yale, which I'm still trying to figure out how he got into Yale, right? I'm trying to figure out, that's a very, very, very difficult school to get into. And I'm trying to figure out, one, how did he get there? And number two, how in the world did he afford it, right? But I'm still digging for that. Again, I think it's very interesting that he gets into politics in 2022, or runs for politics in 2022. And then, now all of a sudden he's the pick for VP. He's really, really good friends with Vivek Ramaswamy, and they were in Yale together. I believe they graduated together, right? But interesting, he never brings that up in the movie, but I don't know. Supposedly they're best buddies in school, but I don't know. So the first time he had an encounter with Thiel, I keep saying Thiel, the H is silent, was in 2011, and articulating a feeling that he was obsessed with the achievement in itself, not as an end to something meaningful, but to win social competition, right? So that means not achieving something so that you can feel the gratification of achieving it. It's achieving something so how other people perceive you as a social competition, right? My worry that I had prioritized striving over character took on a heightened significance. Striving for what, right? I guess I got a nose itch, like a nose hair or something. That happens when you get older, right? Start growing nose hairs, crazy thing. I'm just waiting for the ear hair to start. So he's changed his name 3 or 4 times. I dug into that. At first, I was like, oh boy, what's going on there? But it's not as interesting as it sounds. He basically just, grew up with a name his daddy left when he was real young, and then, his stepdad adopted him, and then he changed his name before he married, which he went back to his grandma's maiden name, I believe, and then his grandpa's name is his middle name. So not that crazy, right? So Jim and Bonnie Vance, known as his Papa and Mamaw, moved to Middletown in the late 1940s from Jackson, Kentucky. And that was for the coal region, right? And Jim was, his grandpa was 16 and his grandmother was 13, pregnant with his mom. I believe his mom. It may have been a brother or something. I'm not sure. His uncle or something. Oh man, nose hair, crazy. All right, so they were unmarried at the time. So Vance descended from hillbilly royalty on his father's side. So his grandfather's distant cousin, also named Jim Vance, married into the Hatfield family, and you may know that by Hatfield-McCoy feud, right? The legendary rumor is that Jim Vance married into there and then committed the unaliving that instigated the legendary Hatfield-McCoy feud. So kind of cool piece of old information. It doesn't really have anything to do with him, but just kind of cool. Vance's biological parents is Donald Bowman and Beth Vance, and they divorced when he was just a toddler, 3, 4, something like that. He was later adopted by, somebody his mom married, Bob Hamill, and that's when he changed his name to James David Hamill. And then that's why I think he just went by JD, kept it there, right? So Bev and Bob, they ended up divorcing. And if you've watched the movie, his mom struggled with addiction, and Vance was really raised more primarily by, his grandparents, right? So and that's, of course, if you watch the movie, you'll see that. But he did say in that movie, like, it was the best thing that ever happened to him was his grandparents, right? But being there for him and all that. So they were Democrats. Like I said, his grandpa voted for Reagan in '84. So that was the one time he stepped outside of the Democrat Party. One thing I want to interject here when I say that is many people in my family, I believe, were Democrats back in the day, right? Way back in the day. So you have to be careful when you talk about this, right? Because Democrats believed in, back in the day, little government, little corporation, right? They didn't want these gigantic conglomerates coming out, like these mega corporations that just swallow middle class and small business owners. And I don't think that was a bad idea. But at some point that got hijacked for this radical left agenda, right? But it used to be little government, right? Like, get out of my business. Don't be all up in my shit and leave me alone. And also don't allow companies to get so big they swallow up everything. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? When you look at hindsight now, where the government is the largest business in America, and then big corporations have swallowed up 50, 60% of small businesses. And now you have to become one of their modern day slaves and work your butt off, grind your gears to your 70 and never make enough to retire, right? All right. So one thing he said that was really, really interesting, right, is he's Scot and Irish, right, which is a kind of that's where he gets his red hair and the beard. And does he wear eyeliner? Like, I have never seen somebody with such dark, I guess that's your eyelid, right? Because it's the top of your eyelid. And unless I've seen like a woman that puts on eyeliner on her, like, they did it back in the 80s and stuff. They traced their eyelids with it. So give them these kind of, make your eyes real white. And it's so weird. Every time I see him, I'm like, does this dude put on eyeliner? I don't know. Just as a side note, right? But one of the things that he says is he's got a lot of good traits from that. And he said, but he also has some bad ones. And one of the things about Scots and Irish is they don't like outsiders. They don't like people that are different than them. It doesn't matter if it's how they look or how they talk or how they act, but the most important was how they talk, right? So I think that's interesting that that's kind of his perception. That's how they were raised. And I mean, again, you're subject to what you're raised. So again, his views could have changed drastically. But he said he was a hillbilly at heart, as in he still is, right? So it was interesting. He said that, and then that was his comment after that. So he did go into the Marine Corps, and he did go to Iraq. He served in the Iraq as a corporal of public affairs in the second Marine Aircraft Wing, right? So he did serve his country honorably. And what he did say was when he went to Iraq, he saw that the promises of the foreign policy establishment, which, back in Washington, was just a complete joke. What they were saying was happening, and what they said they were going to do while they were there was not what was going on, right? So that really turned him off. I can tell you there's a lot of people I know that once they got in the military and saw the I call them FFGs, fuck games, right? So it's very different than what you envision in your mind. And you're threatened all the time, and you're told if you don't do this, that somebody can just take your whole career away with a swipe of a pen. I mean, it's rough. Okay. So, like I said, he graduated from Ohio State with a political science degree and philosophy. I don't even know what that means, so I didn't go to college. But then he went to Yale Law in 2010. And again, I'm really trying to figure out, like, how was this jump for a poor guy that family had no money? Ohio State University, OSU. I mean, shoot, I think that one's pretty dang expensive. Now, in the movie, he says he's working 3 jobs to go through that, right? Okay, I guess. I don't know. I still don't see how you would make it and have time to study and all that, but people do. Okay, so I can't totally knock that out. But then how do you get to Yale? Like that's like quadruple the money of OSU. So I'm like I said, I'm really still trying to dig and find that. Still not really figuring that out. But again, that's where when he was at Yale, he attended that I think it was a TED Talk by Thiel, and they talked about technological stagnation and the decline of the American elites, right? And so he basically saw those two trends as connected, right? And so I just think that's interesting. That's what got him, over to that deal, right? And really just drawn to Thiel. Thiel said, if technological innovation were actually driving real prosperity, our elites wouldn't feel increasingly competitive with one another over a dwindling number of prestigious outcomes, right? So, and then it gets really interesting when you find out what Peter Thiel is involved in. And I'll give you a hint. It goes along with J6, and it's not good. Not good. So let's see. That's where he met Usha, something like that. That's his wife, the mother of his 3 kids. So they've been together since. Well, they married in 2014, and then I think they were together in like 2011, 2010, something like that. So they married in 2014, and they held a separate ceremony where they were blessed by Hindu pundits, right? So she worked for Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, and then Judge Brett Kavanaugh when he was in the D.C. circuit. And now she's a litigator for a fancy firm, Munger, Tolles, and Olson. And despite her conservative clerkships, right, working for those judges, her colleagues say that they describe her as a liberal or maybe a moderate, right? So you have this guy that was raised by Dems, is married to a Democrat, and then was a never Trumper, hardcore, said some pretty rough things about Trump, and then now he's 100% MAGA and the VP nominee. I don't know. I mean, people change. It can happen. So I mean, it is, it is. You have to figure this out. You have to look at this stuff. You have to do it. You have to think about it. But it just seems a little sketchy to me, right? Um, yeah. So in 2016 election, Vance had come out and he was really against Trump, right? He said, I'm a never Trump guy, in October of 2016, right? And said, "My God, what an idiot." He said that about Trump sometime that later that month in October, and then he called Trump cultural heroin. That's an interesting way to describe somebody. Um, and that is a story that he actually wrote and put in the Atlantic. And he also put, I think he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place. And he said that to NPR, right? And then he said, I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon, who wouldn't be that bad and might even prove useful, or that he's America's H word, right? You can't say that on there. The German guy. So he wrote that to a friend in February of 2016. And then in 2019, this guy opens up his own venture firm, right? A venture firm takes a lot of capital, which is Narya, Narya. It's based in Ohio. It's like he named it after a fictional character in Lord of the Rings book, and that's what Peter Thiel did with Palantir. Remember, that was if I'm not mistaken, I watched it with my kids. I want to say that was the thing they looked into to see what was going on, like the all-seeing eye kind of thing, right? And that's really interesting when I start explaining to you who Peter Thiel is, right? So during the Trump years, now Vance says he came to support Trump's policies, and he was really kind of shoved or pushed away to Trump because of how the reactions were from liberals about Trump, right? So he said the thing was that even if you said, hey, these are reasonable, these are good for our society, this is good for our economics, this is good for our, whatever it was that he was talking about, that because he said he was looking at it from a, was it good for the country, or was it good for America, or was it, whatever. And, then he would talk to the liberals about it, and then they would just, come unhinged, right? And he said that's what made him, was their just insane overreactions made him slide towards Trump. I don't know. I mean, it's possible, right? It's definitely possible. And that's how we hope that that we wake people up now, right? I mean, we hope that we get those radicalized people that are on the other side and just spewing hate and all that stuff. And we hope that eventually something bing rings the bell to get them to see that they're not following. Now, am I saying to jump over to Trump's side and that solves the problem? I'm not. I'm saying, but at least they wake up to what they're following. The ideology is very destructive and very bad. So what's interesting is he was baptized in a Catholic church. Again, his wife is Hindu, I believe. And in August of 2019. And he credited that conversion to Peter Thiel. Again, this Thiel guy keeps popping up. Like, he really idolizes this guy. I don't know if he's like a mentor, which it sounds like to me that's what he is. He's a mentor for him. And then that's where it could be real sticky for you and I as American citizens when I tell you about him, right? And another thing that he's quoted is French philosopher Rene Girard, whom Thiel studied under at Stanford University. So again, here comes Thiel again. And Girard is most famous for his theory of mimetic desire, that human beings imitate the desires of their peers, ultimately giving rise to rivalries and violent conflicts that are resolved by scapegoating a common enemy. I mean, that sounds like it would be pretty interesting. And now that I have found this, I'm gonna actually go read that because it does sound interesting. But again, this Thiel guy keeps popping up, so it's like whatever he's doing, whatever he's talking about, whatever he's saying, Vance is following. He set up a venture firm just like he did. He got donated by him. He idolizes who he listens to. His first talk, just he was ooh and ah about it. So that's really interesting when I break out to who this guy is. Some other current intellectual influencers that Vance has talked about has been Rod Dreher, which is the reactionary blogger, and Curtis Yarvin, who's a post-liberal Catholic philosopher, and then Patrick Dean, right? So so this is a comment that was from who was this from? It's a friend of Vance's that went to Yale. He said he is thoroughly goingly illiberal in his instincts. And he said, I don't mean it as a slur, I mean it as a technical sense. He is skeptical of the political project of Enlightenment liberalism, like we are all just autonomous individuals trying to self-actualize and maximize our own interests, right? But that's obviously not what we are as a country, right? We're split into these two parties, and then you got some of us that are in the middle, and then some of us that just given up, don't give a crap anymore, right? So it's not like everybody's just running around trying to maximize their interest. But in 2020, so obviously he ends up voting for Trump, right? And what's interesting is about a week after that is when that movie came out on Netflix, right? So that was kind of interesting timing. Not to say there's anything tied there. I'm just saying that's interesting timing. And then, of course, in 2021, he announces that he's going for the Senate campaign in Ohio, right? So I don't know. I mean, the movie kind of interestingly came, like the whole time that I heard about this movie, I'm like, okay. Then I found out it came out, in 2020, and then he ran for Senate in 2021, and I was like, well, why did he make the movie before that? And why would Netflix make that movie? Just because because at that point he didn't run for Senate, right? He was still, think about this for a minute. He was still he was still had his venture firm and all this stuff, right? So he hadn't become a senator yet. He wasn't in politics yet. So what was the story? He came from a poor America and had a mom that did drugs. And I mean, I had that. So if I call them and tell Netflix about my life, are they going to make a movie about me? I mean, probably not. I didn't go to Yale, right? But what I'm saying is if he had went to Yale, and so what was the, because to me, it seems like the whole thing on it was he gets into politics, which I believe, if I remember correctly, at the end of that movie, they're just adding it in words and pictures that he joined politics, right? So it wasn't part of the movie. But to me, that seemed like the perfect setup for that. And now I'm sure that's been, I don't know, has that been added on after? I don't know the answer to that. But I just think it's really interesting that Netflix chose to do a movie about this guy out of all people, out of all the movies to make and all the people in the world and all that. before he became, because remember this, he didn't announce his Senate campaign until 21, and then they released this movie in 2020. So I don't know. Just to me, it seemed very weird. All right. So he did say that he regretted being wrong about Trump several days later on his campaign trail. He said he thought he was a good president. He said he felt like he made a lot of good decisions for people, and that he felt like he got a lot of heat, right? And later he added that Trump was the best president of his lifetime. So you go from never Trumper to the best president of my lifetime. Interesting. That's all I'm saying. It's just interesting, right? And then Trump said in 2022, which I thought was interesting, is he said, JD is kissing my ass. He wants support so bad, right? When you just take these things into context, I think about me personally and people I know personally, and if I get somebody that's talking trash about me, and it goes to the effect of calling me an a-hole and I'm the worst guy for the job and blah 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 blah. Now, am I saying that I won't ever accept an apology? No, I'm not saying that. Am I saying that we can't be civil after that apology? No, I'm not saying that. Are you going to be working for me at my business? Hell no. Absolutely not. You're not. Right? That's just not going to happen. Because if you felt that way about me at one point, then I think you could slide right back into those feelings pretty easily, right? When I tell you no about something, or I tell you that I don't agree with what you're saying, and I'm not going to, do that or whatever, then, what does that mean? What are you going to do? What are you going to say about me? How are you going to treat me? Or how are you going to go behind my back and undermine me? Maybe go to my employees and start talking trash about me and turn them against me. And next thing I know, my whole staff is believing a bunch of malarkey that you said, and it's not true. Because you've already shown me who you are about me, to me, when you were talking trash to me. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Man, I'm telling you. When you get older and the nose hairs start growing, and then you get older, they get older than that, the ear hairs start coming. It's just driving me crazy. It was just every time I was talking, it's just tickling my nose. And I'm like, yeah. All right. So I'm sure people are making other comments about it. I wonder what he's been doing. Right. So again, am I saying that I don't believe, the whole story of Vance went from a never Trumper to believing Trump is was a good fit for the country and da, da, da. I'm not necessarily saying that I don't believe that. I'm just saying, to me, what's really interesting is how close he is now. And if you say that, keep your enemies closer, BS, I'm gonna lose my shit, right? Because that's horseshit. You don't let your enemy get close to you ever, right? So my point being is, again, if he apologized and went up and shook Trump's hand and said, "Hey, man, you know what? I was wrong. I was believing the hype." But you have to ask yourself, why was he believing the never Trump hype, right? Was he listening to the liberals and the Dems he knows? Because that's what's a majority of the people in Stanford and his friends and the people with Peter T and all these people would be primarily, of the liberal mindset, right? So, say he comes up and he says, "Hey, man, I was wrong. I really was. I wasn't looking at stuff for face value. I was listening to the rhetoric. I bought into it, and I screwed up." Cool. And if you apologize to me in that sense, then I would probably be like, "All right, man, I appreciate you being, man enough, and I appreciate the apology. And, now can you give me a job?" No, I can't do that. No. I mean, we can remain civil. We can talk. We can, pleasantries. but we're not going to become best friends, and you're not going to come work for me. That just ain't gonna work. So I think it's interesting that that is what we're doing here. So um, who is, and then here's a really interesting thing. Who is Vance's biggest supporter? Anybody know who Vance's biggest supporter is? Anybody in the comments? His biggest supporter is Trump Jr. And then his biggest supporter in conservative media is Tucker Carlson, right? And then, of course, his biggest donor, I did not get that nose hair, it's still there, is Peter Thiel, right, to the tune of the $15 million, right? So again, just really, really interesting stuff that this is bringing about. So, of course, Vance had beat, in 2022, Vance had beat Tim Ryan, 53% to 47%. And that was underperforming the other statewide Republicans by, I think it was like 11 points, right? So in his victory speech, he thanks his grandma, who was really important to him, and he told her that you're not going to always agree with every vote that I take, and you're not going to agree with every single amendment that I offer in the United States Senate, but I will never forget the woman who raised me, right? So really cool, really hard. This is crazy. Like, this is crazy, right? Really, that's kind of heartfelt, you know. He's telling his grandma, "Man, I love you, but I'm still going to do what I need to do." So I don't know, take it for what it is. He has definitely come out as Trump's defender, and you know, making this new right movement, and really cranking in the young conservatives, and you know, really trying to push this Republican Party to more of a nationalist and culturally like conservative direction, right? So I don't know if he was behind doing the deal with the social influencer Aiden that Trump just did, that gave him the presidential Rolex and the wrap Tesla truck or whatever, but you can definitely see they're really trying to come after younger people, and I think Vance is, I want to say 30 something, 30 maybe just 30, I don't know. He is the leading critic of U.S. support for Ukraine, right? So he does not care what happens to Ukraine. You know, that's what he told Steve Bannon. He said, "I don't care. I don't really care what happens with them." So I thought that was interesting. So he's also said that he believes that the current administration is allowing fentanyl to come in our southern border as a strategy to unalive Republicans. I don't know. I mean, a lot of Republicans out there doing fentanyl. Like, I don't know. If you he thinks that that's a way that they're really, because it's really picking the heartland of America. A lot of these kids are getting involved in this stuff, and it's just not good. And they're catching in one bust on the border what could take out half the country in just one bust, right? So anyway, let's see. So in 2023, he puts a hold on all the Biden administration appointments to the Justice Department, and that was to protest all the charges that have been brought against and the trials that have been brought against Trump, right? And of course, he said that the hush money trial was a threat to democracy, and you know, I find that's kind of going inside with protecting Trump and being the big supporter of that too, right? So one of the things is he believes that the culture war is class war, right? And that's pushing back against the cultural values of progressive elites is necessary to advance the economic and political interests of the working class. I don't know. I mean, that, does that sound Republican or does it sound more liberal? I don't know. You have to be the judge of that, right? Um, so one of the things he's obviously against is the gender affirming care. He wants to put a ban on the mask mandates. He wants to crack down on affirmative action policies at colleges and universities, and he supports a 15-week unaliving ban, with the exception of rape and incest and threats to the mother's life. Right. So um, those are kind of all, what's being pumped by the Republican deal there, from far as I can tell. Um, and he is against the PRO Act, the holy grail of pro-union labor reform. I don't know a whole lot about the union. I know that the people I know that work that I've met that have worked in the union, they love it because it's really hard to get fired. And I think their pay's better and their benefits are a little better. So, but I don't know. I've also heard some very negative stories about that from people that are in it. So, I don't want to dive into that, but and he has compared the current movement in American history to the end of the Roman Republic, which I thought was very, very, very interesting. He said we are in a late Republican period in America. He said on a podcast, right? And he said if we're going to push back against it, we're going to have to get pretty wild and pretty far out there and go in directions that a lot of conservatives right now are uncomfortable with. I'm going to say that to you again. I want you to hear that. If we're going to push back against it, we're going to have to get pretty wild and pretty far out there and go in directions that a lot of conservatives right now are uncomfortable with. That I thought was pretty interesting, right? He had said it, if he was in Mike Pence's shoes in 2021, he would not have certified it. And what his direct statement was, if I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that they needed to have multiple slates of electors. And I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there. Pretty interesting, right? So, and one of the things is, I guess, when they're coming in, that is being known to be the plan is they're going to be letting go a lot of the executive branch officials. And of course, he feels like they're going to get pushback from the Supreme Court. And then he's told Trump that he thinks he should defy the Supreme Court. So I don't know. That could definitely get things pretty touchy, right? So one of the things that was interesting is Tucker Carlson has met, God, I'd have to say he's met a lot of people, right? I mean, in the line of work that he's done, I think he's been doing this for 20, I want to say 20 years, I think. And he said that Vance is by far the smartest and the deepest of any senator that I've ever met. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know really how to take that one, because I know that he's met a lot of really smart people, but maybe he is. I don't know, because our senators aren't that right. But I know, I'm just saying, I know that he sat down, Tucker has, with Gates and with Ron. I was about to say Ron Paul, really. Anyway, some of our Rand Paul and some of those. So I find it interesting that Vance is the smartest. But again, I haven't watched a lot of stuff about him, so I don't really know, right? And then of course Steve Bannon said that he knows that he'll run for presidency, and that's been a big talk about things. Is that's come up, right? That's come up about that already. That's why they're saying they're getting him in young, and so I thought that was interesting. So. I think Politico, believe it or not, that's the list that Politico came up with. I fact checked it. It was very factual. So, which is rare. So, and I will have to say this right now. And this is a very weird thing for me. I'm starting to see things in Newsweek and Washington Time, all these different Politico, AP, all these places where we have seen a lot of complete out and out lies and BS. I'm actually starting to see some truth coming out of these organizations, that's pretty shocking to me at this point. So, again, I think that you have to obviously vet everything that you read, research it. Does it take a lot of time? Yeah, it does. That's why I think a lot of people listen to podcasters and creators because they don't want to do the work, right? Or maybe they just need to hear it and then go research it themselves. But I still encourage you, no matter who you listen to, before you start standing on their word, you need to go research what they say. And if they're wrong, correct them. Like every once in a while, I'll have somebody send me something, and they'll be like, "Hey, you said this, and that's not right." And they'll send me like a link. I'll go look that up, and then if I find it to be credible, I always tell them thank you, and then I'll go delete the post. So some people will make another post to say, "Oh, I made a post about this, and that's not true." But the reason they don't want to take it down is because it's got 100,000 views. So they don't want to take it down because it's moving them up the algorithm. Well, if that's what you're doing this for, you're in it for the wrong reason. So, I know that I get pushed down all the time, because I have, like I got 2-3 videos right now pinned to the top of my page on TikTok, and that's like almost 2 million views, but yet I've got 17,000 followers. So I know what they're doing, right? And I know how they're doing it. I know why they're doing it, but that doesn't stop me from fighting back, right? And voicing my opinion and searching for the truth. But I do have a responsibility, not that they have a responsibility to shut me up, but and stop me from spreading the disinformation. But I do have an obligation, since I have people that are listening to me. I do have an obligation to tell them the truth, right? And not just do something for clicks, not just do something for likes. Which, by the way, I just want to say this for those of you that are watching still. I do not make money off of anything. I don't make it off of Rumble. I don't make it off of TikTok. I've never have. I've never made a penny. I did start there's a link in my bio for merch in TikTok. My son came up with some shirts, and anyway, so he wanted to do that, and I told him I would help him. But I don't make anything off of this. So, but the one reason I do it is I do it to spread the truth, and I do it to hopefully reach somebody that hasn't seen the truth, sees the truth, and finds their own truth to that, and figures it out, and then changes maybe what they believe to go more in the right direction, right? I'm not saying I have all the answers, but if you're following these radical left ideas, you're definitely not going in the right direction. I think there was 400 people marching in New York the other day for communism. Like, what is it? What do you have to tell yourself that you think that is better than being free, right? So and somebody said, well, maybe they're all broke and really poor and they don't have anything anyway. And I thought, well, okay, that could definitely be the case. But you still have a chance to get out of that, go get a good job, go make money. You have that chance. In communism, you would never have that chance. And how people can look at other countries like China and all these other places that have it and just think that's the best way to live, like being told what to do, when to do, how to do it, told what you can say, what you can't say, have your money turned on and off when you break a rule. I mean, like, oh, come on, man, nobody could really want some crap like that, right? So Well, the reason I say all that is because if you see videos that we're trying to get a message out, if you don't like them, if you don't share them, and if you don't comment, you have to do all three to really help that creator get the message out, right? You have to like it, you have to share it, and you have to comment all three. Now, if you like it, it helps. If you comment, it helps. If you share, it helps. If you do all three, it really helps. Or if you're watching a podcast and it resonates with you, send it to a couple of your friends. That helps us build these platforms and get the message out. Again, I'm not doing this for $1. I'm doing it to get, because I don't make any money at it, is I do it so people can hear the truth, right? And if you believe in what we're saying, then if you do those three things for us, it really, truly helps get the message out and gets it to hopefully somebody that has not seen it and doesn't believe what we believe or in the line of thinking that we're thinking, and it activates something in them and really gets them to see it from a different perspective, right? Because every person ever that's watched any video of mine ever, at some point, you didn't agree with something and somebody showed you something different, and then it changed your belief. And you were like, oh, I didn't know that. So we owe it to these people that we're butting heads with and we're fighting with. We owe it to them to try to show them. I know it's difficult, very, very, very difficult. But I know if we stay fighting, then that's just it. We all know where that's going to end. And sadly, and very afraid that we're already past the point of that. So again, I will do the Peter Thiel. If I don't get it done tomorrow, I may just do it Tuesday, because it's a lot to dive into of who this guy is. He not only donated 15 million, but he's also donated 45 million to Trump's campaign. And Palantir, if you get a chance, do a little research on that. It's not good. It's not good. In just a nutshell, they're the company that harvests all the online data, have thousands of data points on you, and gives our information to the Pentagon. So, yeah, that's just a very little tiny glimpse into what is really going on. So anyway, I guess that's it for tonight. Again, I appreciate you guys sticking in with me through technical difficulties and my nose hair tonight. And just remember, like we've got to this whole just attacking people when they say something you don't agree with, because the right is doing it too, and they do it every day, all the time, and it's just getting old. And people like me that just try to slide down the middle and find the truth, and only try to give you the truth so that you can base your decision off of that. Eventually, it'll get people like us to where we don't even want to bother with it anymore, right? Because you figure if as long as you say what one side agrees to, they'll leave you alone. But if you don't say what the other one agrees to, then they're going to attack you, and it's just not worth it, right? So try to be more understanding and more conversational with people, and try to just listen to hear what other people have to say. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Go do your homework, research it, and then come draw your own conclusion. But at least listen to people, and then don't naturally assume right out of the gate that you're right and they're wrong because you believe what you believe and they said something that contradicts that. All right, peace out. You guys have a good night. And I'll see you on Tuesday.